If you're a diehard Browns fan and love breaking down the game like we do, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a blitz. Coming out of the bye week, the Cleveland Browns have decided to shake things up in a move that has left fans, analysts, and even some players wondering what's really going on behind the scenes. Head coach Kevin Stefanski, who has built his entire NFL reputation on being an offensive mastermind, has once again handed over play-calling duties, this time to offensive coordinator Tommy Rees. The decision comes at a moment when the Browns' offense is not just struggling, but flat-out sinking to the bottom of the league standings. Through 8 games, Cleveland ranks 31st in total yards and 31st in expected points added per play, managing to edge out only the Tennessee Titans in both categories. For a team that was supposed to be balanced and competitive, especially with a defensive unit that has carried its share of the load, this kind of offensive collapse demands answers, and Stefanski's decision to pass the baton could be his boldest gamble yet. When a head coach gives up play-calling duties, especially one known for his offensive acumen, it always sparks discussion about confidence, control, and accountability. Stefanski's identity as a head coach is built around his ability to design smart, efficient offenses. It's what got him the job in Cleveland in the first place. But now, with the team sitting near the bottom of every meaningful offensive category, fans are questioning whether that identity has eroded. This isn't the first time Stefanski has done something like this, and that's what makes this move so fascinating. Last season, he handed play-calling responsibilities to then-coordinator Ken Dorsey midway through the year when the team lost to Deshaun Watson and was forced to roll with Jameis Winston. The context then was that Stefanski was trying to adapt to a changing quarterback situation and simplify things. But this time, it's different. The Browns still have their starting quarterback, Dillon Gabriel, for now, and there's no major shift in personnel. Stefanski's decision seems to be rooted more in a desire to spark something, anything, within a stagnant unit that has lost its confidence and rhythm. The announcement that Tommy Rees will call plays beginning in Week 10 against the New York Jets didn't just raise eyebrows. It lit up the Cleveland sports talk circuit. Rees, who came to the Browns after a stint in college football with Alabama, brings a different perspective, one that values tempo, motion, and creativity. While Stefanski's system has long been based on balance and precision, Rees might inject some unpredictability. The timing is crucial. Coming out of a bye week, teams often make internal adjustments, but to switch play callers is a major philosophical change. The bye week gives everyone a chance to reset, analyze tendencies, and introduce new wrinkles, and it seems Stefanski used that time not just for schematic review, but for some deep self-reflection about what his offense has become. The decision not to change quarterbacks alongside this move is another intriguing element. Dillon Gabriel, while serviceable, hasn't exactly inspired confidence. His numbers are modest, his reads inconsistent, and the Browns' inability to generate explosive plays has been glaring. But with Shedeur Sanders still nursing a back injury, Stefanski's hands are somewhat tied. Even if Sanders were fully healthy, it's unlikely the Browns would throw him into the fire just yet. After all, Gabriel has only had 4 starts, and tossing a rookie quarterback into a turbulent offense can do more harm than good. So for now, the plan is stability at quarterback and creativity on the headset, a combination that Stefanski hopes can generate some much-needed rhythm. Inside the locker room, reactions have been cautiously optimistic. Browns guard Wyatt Teller spoke candidly about the change, saying he fully trusts Stefanski's leadership but understands why the adjustment was made. When an offense is ranked 31st in the league, doing nothing isn't an option. Players thrive on belief, and right now, the Browns' offense hasn't given them much to believe in. Teller's comments reflect that delicate balance between loyalty and realism. He believes in Stefanski, but he also knows the results must improve. The offensive line, in particular, has taken much of the blame for the lack of production, with inconsistent pass protection and limited push in the run game. Maybe a fresh voice in play calling can help reestablish the identity that this team desperately needs. From an outside perspective, Stefanski's move is difficult to interpret. On one hand, giving up play calling might be viewed as a selfless act, a coach putting ego aside for the good of the team. On the other, it can be seen as a sign of desperation, especially since it's the second consecutive season he's done it. If Rees manages to turn things around, the spotlight will inevitably shift back to Stefanski. Why did it take so long to make the change? Has he lost his touch? Is he too rigid in his approach? These are the kinds of questions that will swirl around Berea for the next several weeks, and no amount of coach speak will quiet them if the offense doesn't show immediate signs of life. Rees, for his part, inherits a unit that's lacking confidence and identity. The Browns have struggled to find any rhythm on early downs, constantly putting themselves behind the chains. The passing game has been anemic, with receivers rarely creating separation and the play design often failing to put players in space. Cleveland's play-action game, once a staple under Stefanski, has lost its bite because defenses no longer respect the run. With Nick Chubb still out and the running back committee producing minimal yardage after contact, it's up to Rees to find creative ways to move the ball. That might mean more pre-snap motion, more quick throws, and a willingness to push the tempo instead of relying on the slow, methodical drives that have sputtered all season. In a way, Stefanski's decision is a recognition that something fundamental has gone wrong with the offensive structure. When you look at how other teams adapt, the difference is often in mindset, not just in play design. Stefanski's offense has felt overly cautious, focused more on avoiding mistakes than creating opportunities. That might have worked when the defense was dominant and the offense just needed to play complementary football. But in today's NFL, that approach gets exposed quickly. Explosiveness is the currency of success, and the Browns have been bankrupt in that department. Rees could represent a new philosophy, one that embraces risk and seeks momentum instead of control. Still, even the most optimistic fans understand that changing play callers mid-season rarely leads to an overnight transformation. The offense isn't suddenly going to look like Kansas City's or Miami's. What Cleveland can hope for is energy, unpredictability, and maybe a spark that reignites players' confidence. If Rees can find a way to get Amari Cooper more involved downfield, utilize Elijah Moore in motion, and create better matchups for tight end David Njoku, then maybe, just maybe, the Browns can find a rhythm that's been missing since the start of the year. The offensive line must also tighten up, especially with protection schemes, to give Gabriel time to execute. From a job security standpoint, Stefanski finds himself in a delicate position. This decision could either solidify his status as a self-aware leader or hasten his exit if it fails. Owners and general managers don't often have patience for coaches who tinker repeatedly without clear results. The Browns have shown faith in Stefanski through turbulence before, through quarterback controversies, injuries, and offensive inconsistency. But this feels like a make-or-break stretch. If the team finishes another season with an offense near the bottom of the league, it won't matter how stout the defense is or how close the games have been. The narrative will be that Stefanski, once hailed as the offensive mind to modernize the Browns, lost his edge when it mattered most. There's also a broader psychological angle to this story. When a coach relinquishes play calling, it can subtly shift the dynamics of authority. Players start to wonder who really sets the tone on offense. Is it Stefanski, the architect of the system, or Rees, the man now pulling the trigger on game day? That ambiguity can be either empowering or destabilizing, depending on results. If Rees calls a bold, aggressive game and the offense responds, the locker room could rally around him and feed off the new energy. But if things don't improve, or worse, if communication between the staff breaks down, it could lead to finger-pointing and frustration. Stefanski knows this, which is why the decision likely wasn't made lightly. In the grand scheme of things, this move represents more than just a change in who holds the play sheet. It's an admission that the Browns need to evolve or risk being left behind in a league that rewards innovation. Stefanski's willingness to adjust might signal maturity, an understanding that leadership sometimes means delegation. But it also opens the door to scrutiny, especially if Rees's offense suddenly looks more fluid and efficient than what Stefanski has produced in recent seasons. The Cleveland fanbase, starved for consistent offensive football, will be watching closely. Every drive, every red zone possession, every decision on third down will be analyzed as evidence of whether this coaching experiment is working or failing. As the Browns prepare to face the Jets in Week 10, the narrative couldn't be more compelling. A head coach trying to redefine his legacy, a new play caller seeking to prove himself, and a struggling offense desperate to rediscover its pulse. It's the kind of storyline that defines seasons. For Stefanski, this isn't just about fixing an offense. It's about reaffirming belief in his leadership. For Rees, it's an opportunity to showcase creativity on the NFL stage. And for the Browns as a whole, it's a test of resilience, a chance to prove that even when things look bleak, the right adjustments can spark a turnaround. Whether this gamble pays off or becomes another chapter in Cleveland's long history of offensive frustration remains to be seen. But one thing is clear. Coming out of the bye week, the Browns are betting on change, and for Kevin Stefanski, that bet might define his career. Enjoying the content so far? Smash that like button and drop your take in the comments. We want to hear what you think about the Browns this season. All right, buckle up, folks, because this one is the kind of story that shakes not just a locker room, but the entire landscape of the NFL. Imagine waking up, scrolling through your feed, and suddenly seeing the headline: Myles Garrett is leaving the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, not traded, not rumored to be shopped around. Actually walking away after what insiders are calling a complete meltdown between the superstar defensive end and the front office. This is the kind of thing that doesn't just happen overnight. It's the kind of slow-burn tension that's been simmering behind closed doors for months, maybe even years, and now it's finally exploded in public for the world to see. The timing, the tone, the fallout. It's all pure chaos in Cleveland, and the rest of the league is watching with dropped jaws. So let's set the scene. Myles Garrett, the face of the franchise, the guy who's been carrying the Browns' defense on his back since being drafted first overall in 2017, has had enough. Reports are flying in that the relationship between Garrett and upper management has completely deteriorated. It's being described by people close to the situation as irreparable. Apparently, it started with internal disagreements over the team's direction, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Garrett, who's known for his intense competitiveness and leadership, allegedly clashed with new defensive staff and even with key members of the front office over how the team was being built. He wanted commitment to winning now, while management was, according to whispers, looking at long-term restructuring. That philosophical split seems to have turned personal, and when that happens with a star player like Garrett, there's no easy way back. To really grasp the gravity of this, you have to understand what Myles Garrett means to Cleveland. This isn't just a player. He's a cornerstone, a generational talent who embodies the modern defensive end, powerful, explosive, intelligent, and dominant on every snap. He's the kind of guy who changes game plans, who forces offenses to adjust just because he's on the field. Losing him, for any reason, is like ripping the heart out of the Browns' defense. This man isn't replaceable. So when the news broke that he had officially announced his decision to leave after a heated confrontation with the Browns brass, the entire NFL community collectively gasped. Fans didn't believe it at first. Some thought it was a hoax. Some assumed it was another exaggerated off-season rumor. But then Garrett himself posted a cryptic message online. A simple but emotional statement hinting that sometimes respect means walking away when your voice stops being heard. That was it. No team names, no hashtags, no direct accusations. But everyone knew exactly what he meant. Behind that one statement, though, is a storm of frustration that insiders have been hinting at for weeks. According to people who've been around the organization, tension between Garrett and the front office reached a boiling point after a series of meetings this season. Apparently, Garrett had pushed for certain personnel changes, specifically bringing in more veteran help on the defensive line and adding a pass rush specialist to the coaching staff. Management reportedly pushed back, citing budget constraints and long-term strategy. That's when things started spiraling. Garrett, who's always prided himself on professionalism, began to feel like his input didn't matter anymore. And if there's one thing top athletes hate, it's feeling undervalued in their own locker room. You could sense something was off even on the field. While Garrett continued to play at an elite level, observers noticed moments where he seemed distant, less celebratory after big plays, more reserved during press conferences. There were those subtle signs, the kind that only show up when a player's mind isn't fully aligned with the team's leadership anymore. He'd often speak in broader terms about accountability and vision in post-game interviews, phrases that at the time sounded generic but now feel loaded with subtext. The writing was on the wall, but nobody wanted to believe it. Not in Cleveland. Not with a guy who'd publicly committed to the city, who'd spoken about his love for the fans, and who'd seemingly been the centerpiece of everything the Browns were building. But here's where the rumor mill really starts to spin. People close to the situation claim the breaking point came during a private team meeting last week. Sources describe it as a blow-up, a shouting match between Garrett and a member of the executive staff over the handling of an internal issue. What exactly that issue was remains unclear, but apparently, it revolved around accountability for the team's underwhelming defensive performances and a dispute over who was truly responsible. Some say Garrett felt like management was subtly pinning the blame on the players, while executives believed leadership in the locker room hadn't been strong enough. It was one of those moments where both sides crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. By the next morning, Garrett reportedly told teammates he was done. If you think the Browns' front office was caught off guard, think again. People within the organization had apparently seen this coming. There had been attempts to patch things up, to mediate, to get Garrett and the brass back on the same page. But when trust is gone, all the team meetings and phone calls in the world can't fix it. The Browns, meanwhile, are now in full damage control mode. Officially, they're staying quiet, releasing only a brief statement thanking Garrett for his years of service and saying the organization respects his decision and wishes him the best moving forward. But unofficially, insiders say there's panic behind closed doors. Losing a player of Garrett's caliber doesn't just change your defense. It changes the entire identity of your team. And let's not pretend other teams aren't circling like sharks. The minute word got out that Garrett was walking away, you can bet that half the league started making phone calls. Even though there's no official trade in place, and even though he's technically still under contract, if a player of his stature says he wants out, teams will find a way to make it happen. The whispers have already begun. The Dallas Cowboys, the Los Angeles Rams, and even the San Francisco 49ers are reportedly monitoring the situation. Can you imagine Garrett lining up opposite Nick Bosa? That would be a nightmare for every quarterback in the NFC. But the question everyone's asking right now is simple. How did it come to this? How did a player who was once the smiling face of the franchise, who seemed fully invested in the Browns' vision, reach the point where he'd rather leave than continue fighting for a team that he once called home? The answer, according to several sources, lies in communication, or rather, the lack of it. Over the past year, Garrett had reportedly grown frustrated with the inconsistency in the organization's message. One week it was about building a championship defense. The next it was about patience and long-term goals. For a guy in his prime, one who's already tasted Pro Bowls, All-Pro honors, and even MVP votes, patience starts wearing thin when the results don't match the promises. It's also impossible to ignore the emotional element here. Garrett has always been a passionate, outspoken leader. He's never been shy about voicing his thoughts, whether it's about team strategy, coaching, or even social issues. That same passion that makes him such a dynamic force on the field can also make him volatile in moments of frustration. People who know him personally say he's loyal to a fault until he feels betrayed. Once that happens, he doesn't look back. And that's what this feels like. A final break. Meanwhile, fans are torn between heartbreak and anger. Social media is a war zone right now, with some supporters blaming the front office for mismanaging their superstar and others claiming Garrett overreacted. But deep down, everyone knows what this really means. The Browns are entering yet another identity crisis. Just when it felt like the franchise had finally stabilized, just when optimism was beginning to take root after years of chaos, the rug gets pulled out again. For Cleveland, this isn't just about losing a player, it's about losing belief. Now, where does Garrett go from here? He's in his prime, with plenty of football left in the tank. There's no doubt teams will line up for his services. But this move, this very public, very emotional exit, sends a message about what kind of situation he's looking for next. He's not going to want just money. He's going to want an organization that listens, that values leadership, and that's fully committed to winning now. The next team that gets him isn't just signing a pass rusher. They're signing a man on a mission. As for the Browns, well, they're facing a long winter ahead. They'll have to rebuild the locker room culture, restore trust with the fan base, and somehow find a way to fill the void Garrett leaves behind. That's easier said than done. Players like Myles Garrett don't just grow on trees. They're once-in-a-generation athletes. Losing him, especially like this, through conflict and disillusionment, will haunt the organization for years. In the end, this whole saga serves as a brutal reminder that in the NFL, talent alone isn't enough. Relationships, respect, and trust are what hold teams together. When those start to crumble, even the strongest franchises can fall apart from within. Myles Garrett walking away from the Browns isn't just a story about one man leaving a team. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when communication breaks down, when egos collide, and when a team forgets that its greatest assets aren't just stats on paper, but human beings who need to feel heard. So here we are, folks, the biggest bombshell of the season. Myles Garrett, gone from Cleveland after a full-blown conflict with the front office. The locker room stunned, the fans in disbelief, the league buzzing. Whatever happens next, one thing's for sure. This isn't just another headline. This is the kind of story that'll be talked about for years, the kind that changes careers, reshapes franchises, and reminds everyone just how fragile success in the NFL can really be. Thanks for riding with us on another Browns Blitz. If you liked the video, share it with a fellow fan, hit subscribe, and ring that bell so you're always part of the Dawg Pound conversation. Go Browns!